All right. Well, welcome everybody. We're happy to have you here for today's webinar focused on using Nix at enterprise scale. So whether you're a longtime Nix user or just starting to explore how it fits into your organization, you're definitely in the right place. For those of you that have been to some webinars before, you probably recognize me. But those of you that are joining for the first time, my name is Jeff Martins. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Determinate Systems, and I'm going to be your host for today's webinar. Before we jump in, I wanted to share a few more things, just a little bit about us and about what to expect for today. Quick overview about Determinate Systems. We are the enterprise Nix company. We're dedicated to making Nix more simple, secure, and confident in enterprise environments. We build tools for Nix, like the very popular Nix installer, which statistically speaking, about 40 to 50% of you are probably using on a regular basis. We're really excited to have given that to the community and to have made installing Nix a much more pleasant and enjoyable experience. We're also the makers of Determinate Nix. That's a downstream distribution of Nix, everything that's upstream, but it gives our customers the ability to see things a little bit earlier than what they otherwise would, as far as the PR merging schedule of upstream project. And of course, we're also the makers of Flake Hub, a private and public Flake sharing and binary caching product. But in addition to all the tools that we build, we also care deeply about the Nix community and ecosystem. We contribute upstream frequently. We're lucky to call the creator of Nix, Ilko Dolstra, one of our co-founders, and he spends a lot of his time at Determinate making Nix better for everybody, whether you're a Determinate user or not. But most importantly, we help organizations harness the power of Nix. Sometimes we do that with our products, and sometimes we do that because we care about Nix and seeing the world become a more, simple, confident, and reliable place when it comes to software development. So let's jump into the webinar and let me introduce you to our speaker. So leading today's session and giving Luke Perkins a break for once is none other than Determinate co-founder and CEO, Graham Christensen. If you have used Nix for more than about a day, you've probably come across Graham, something that he's written, something that he's said, a best practice that he's championed, or PRs he's pushed up to the project, or parts of the community that he's helped build. He was bitten by the Nix bug, I think a little bit more than 10 years ago now, and he quickly became one of the project's top contributors, most vocal advocates, and important community builders. He has a love for Nix, and he's been sharing that love for Nix with anybody that'll listen to him. And I know he's really excited to have all of you listening to him today and sharing, what we are doing to make Nix better, both upstream, but also through our products, whether they be open source or things that we sell. In 2022, he teamed up with Ilko Dolstra to create Determinate Systems. And our mission, like I said earlier, is to make Nix more simple, secure, and confident in enterprise environments. And that's exactly what he's going to tell you more about today. All right, so I think that's all that I have for you. I'm going to get off the mic and pass things over to Graham, and he's going to get started with today's webinar on Nix and enterprise scale. So Graham, take it away.
Cool. Thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciate you setting these up and getting these going there. I think they're really fun. I mean, you know as well as I do, like I'm a nerd turned into a CEO. I really fell in love with Nix, and while I find these fun, man, they do make me anxious still because they are not my natural habitat. Anyway, let's get started here. Cool. All right. I'm Graham. I've co-founded Determinate Systems back in 2022 with Ilko Dolstra, who invented Nix. But my relationship with Ilko actually started a long time, quite some time before that. He and I had been consulting on Nix for, we probably were doing it for about a decade apiece when we decided to start this, maybe a little bit less than that. But so he wrote this PhD, like 20 years ago about getting software from one computer to another and how to make it actually work when it gets to the other side. That's what Nix is all about. it turned out to be just sort of a watershed, um, incredible piece of work, uh, whose time just hadn't come yet. And I'm so excited that, I believe the time has come, and the industry is seeing that, and we're seeing that across the whole ecosystem. And that's what's so exciting to me is that Nix is happening now, and enterprises are starting to adopt it. And that's actually what we were consulting on that whole time. And so we saw more and more companies starting to adopt Nix, and we would be brought in, and we would see all these interesting things about how they decided to use Nix and how to make it work for them. Um, and we would solve their problems, and we would solve like it's essentially the same two or three problems over and over and over for different organizations, but we couldn't really make headway on the greater scope of making Nix easier to use at the enterprise. And so we struck out to start Determinate. And so we've come up with this idea of what we call the Nix powered enterprise. And it's all about the successful path, the successful golden path of rolling out Nix, and um, not burning up all your time on cycles doing fiddly work that isn't key to your product and to what your organization does. And so what we envision when we talk about this Nix powered enterprise is essentially a top to bottom transformation. It usually starts at the bottom and works its way top a little bit at a time. You don't have to do everything at once. You don't have to do a big bang migration all at once. That's real risky. But we do think about it in terms of, essentially every computing context. If there's like a computer and software doing things, then Nix, like there's a place for Nix there, that might be able to save you a lot of time and a lot of headache, by bringing reliable deployments and deeply introspectable software stacks that you can do security analysis on, and reliable, predictable development environments on. And that, of course, also covers like developer workstations, CI, cloud servers, uh, airplanes flying in the sky, and submarines under the ocean. I've even heard about it being used in satellites, which I'm really personally very excited about, having grown up near Cape Canaveral, Florida. But importantly, like Nix is making each of these places better by simplifying the onboarding, simplifying the development workstate, the workflow for the developer, making CI more predictable, and making that deploy process, the last mile application, rock solid. And we consider that to cover, Python, Java, Rust, essentially any language that you're using. You can be applying Nix to that to some degree, and getting a ton of value. And you don't have to go all the way. You don't actually have to go deploy with Nix to get a real amount of value. You can start with just a development environment and be off to the races. And because all of these pieces fit together so seamlessly, things that have been holding you back for years, like a huge onboarding README about how to install all the things, and it's obviously always out of date because the last time it got updated was the last time you hired somebody, and they had to set up their machine. That essentially all goes away because you just run Nix develop and you have everything you need to be effective, and focus and more radically, innovate on your product. And then ultimately, the goal here is not like Nix is not the point. The point is your products. The point is what your company does. And being able to, um, get this like rock solid baseline, foundation of Nix for your dependencies and deployment and development environments and CI. Eventually, it sort of fades into the background as you focus more on your product, while Nix is, sort of in the background providing all this value and utility to your team. And importantly, we're not the only ones saying this. One in particular I love, is this, something that Mitchell Hashimoto, he founded, HashiCorp. He's now working on a really nice terminal called Ghosty. Anyway, he really put it quite succinctly, which, it completely eliminates classes of problems that cause a ton of problems and headache and operational issues. And it eliminates fear of experimentation. And that is so important. Being able to, make radical changes that you just would never attempt if you're trying to manage your environment with legacy tooling, is just absolutely incredible. And being able to move more quickly, instead of staying on like a calcified old stack of software that you just have all used forever because it's just always what you've used, that can get in the way of it innovating and shipping, and really slows down your teams. But Nix helps you escape that and helps you move more quickly and try things because it's so safe. Okay, but again, so at the enterprise, to be effective with Nix outside of the home lab, you need a few things to be successful. You need to be able to reliably distribute it to your team, and that includes binary caches and credentials and any sort of other configuration that you need for your team to be able to use how you use Nix. That's one. The second thing is a private binary cache that is pushed to in CI, but importantly, never pushed to by a developer, because developer workstations are messy places. You don't want to run software from a workstation in production. You want to push from CI. Developers can pull from it, and it's well known and safe and trusted. And then the other thing is the ability to go fast. You don't want to like spend a bunch of toil and time gluing pieces together. That's work we've done because we've seen how much time organizations have burned up on it. But that is especially true for CI workflows like installing and configuring Nix, getting credentials. This is going to be a theme here, and then how to actually deploy it, where again, those exact same topics are a problem. And so this is exactly, these are the three things you need to figure out and get into place for your organization to be successful. And this is a huge problem that causes many attempts to adopt Nix to fail. And that's when it's treated as a science experiment. And what I mean by this is it's pretty, for the right engineer, Nix is like catnip. And working on it and working on it and working on it, it is just super fun. And so they'll go off and they'll build a bunch of scripts and hacks and stuff to make it work in CI, and a bunch of scripts and READMEs and whatever to make it work on your workstation, and like get other team people involved. And they'll maybe go set up like a binary cache in an S3 bucket and never tell IT about it because IT doesn't is worried about something. Uh, like these are all things that happen. And then every time you try to do a new project, um, it turns out the work was not applicable again because it was really built in the small. It was built to target a single repository or a single team or a single deployment environment. And so this is a side effect of the architecture of Nix out of the box, which is it's what I call low policy. It's a tool, it's a bunch of like components that you can script together and make work nicely, but you have to do it. Nix doesn't do it for you. And that's where determinate Nix comes in. Determinate is more high policy, and Flakecup makes it high policy. It takes what is sort of like a choose your own adventure in an ecosystem where there's just infinity adventures, and turns it into a set of workflows that you can take off the shelf and be effective at on day one. And again, there are a lot of adventures. Every single place on this, every node on this graph is a new adventure to go solve, and it's very easy to just sort of get stuck in this forever, having a lot of fun, but work that is not unique to your team and doesn't directly benefit your team. It's more to the ends of playing with Nix and making it more effective. And you just don't need to do that. You can get really great security, you can get great fast workflows, and you don't have to dedicate entire quarters of an engineer to do it yourself. And so this starts at onboarding and how you actually install Nix and getting access to the binary cache, which should be secured. A lot of places will just copy paste a API token from somewhere, and it's on Jira or Confluence or whatever. And you have to solve these things again on GitHub, where you have to, maybe preload SSH keys so it can download stuff from GitHub, other GitHub repositories, or read and write to the cache. A lot of organizations will sort of, I think, be a little too cavalier with their binary cache and let anybody upload to it. And again, I think that's a really big mistake. You have a huge problem there around provenance and the reliability and safety of those builds. And so, ideally, you spend the time to make sure only GitHub can push. But if you have to set up a second GitHub repository, you have to do it again. And it just gets more and more complicated as you go. And then if you switch CI vendors, you have to do it a third time. When you get into CI or deploying to production, like on Amazon, you have to deal with SSH keys and API tokens and all this stuff again. And like, again, none of these pieces are solved in the large. They're all solved in the small. And so they're not transferable. Like if you hired somebody new who was experienced with Nix, they'd have to learn your custom stack about how it all works. Or if you transition between teams, again, it might just be completely different stack or configuration or workflow. And like, these properties, the security work and being able to deploy and all this, it's important. But it's not necessarily novel work, and you don't have to do it, is I suppose the thrust here. And so when you're working on all of this, it's very easy for a developer to fall into essentially a wild goose chase of trying to make the problems better, but not really having the organizational buy-in to do it at the level they need to. And so working in the small, and what it causes is a handful of really common scenarios and what I think are very dangerous and risky outcomes. Just to go over these briefly, having a binary cache in an S3 bucket, IT IT has thoughts about that. InfoSec has thoughts about that. And it's very easy to end up with shadow IT where somebody sets up a bucket, it turns into critical infrastructure for your company, and like IT and InfoSec just don't even know about it. And that's a problem, right? And it's likely to create tension between teams, reduce organization buy-in, and risk the greater adoption of Nix. Like I mentioned, like that non-transferable knowledge where you can't hire somebody who already understands how your pieces fit together, and repositories where CI and cache and all this stuff are completely differently configured. It's an adventure you just don't need to solve. And uh, as a lot of Nix users, especially more long-time ones, are familiar with Nix being unsupported anywhere, they're very happy to go like hack their way through to supporting Nix on whatever platform you want to use and writing a lot of like scripts and stuff to do it. But when you do have good vendor support and we can provide that, we have integrations with Amazon and GitHub Actions and other cloud vendors and CI tools. You get an ecosystem that is predictable, where things just work the same way. Like CI in repo A, platform A, and repo B and platform B, they're predictable. They configured the same. They have the same access control. All of these things, and then that's the same up in production on wherever you're deploying to in your workstation too. It really cuts down a ton of the friction and sort of grit that slows down the process. And again, the thing that I think most people know us for is our Determinate Nix installer. And that's made even better with Determinate Nix, where the Determinate Nix installer that we have, it on the macOS package, it works like 99.9% of the time. And when there's a problem, we work, that's like an emergency. We go figure that out and solve it. And so just having like predictable, more reliable ecosystem that you can truly depend on to work correctly every time. That's our mission. That's the work we're doing. Because frankly, it was no fun trying to do it every like consulting engagement over and over. Um, so as part of this, one of the things we've really focused on is like the day one experience for a new member joining your team. And so uh, one of the things we've done is we've added Microsoft Entra integration to Flake Hub. And so the experience you could expect is you bind your Entra organization with Flake Hub, you hire a new person. On day one, they go log into Flake Hub and they're automatically part of your organization. They can all automatically download your private flakes, automatically download from your binary cache. It's all out of the box, it's ready. And we're SOC 2 Type 2 compliant, and do a lot of security work to be friendly and collaborative with your InfoSec teams. When it's not uncommon for initial Nix adoption to be a little antagonistic with InfoSec teams, and you don't need to do that. You can bring Nix in through the front door, not the back door. And along those lines, we've worked closely with IT teams to enable things like MDM integration. So your day one experience, again, you open up your laptop and you've already got Determinate Nix and it's already configured and ready to go for your team. All you have to do is log in. And that can be true across, if you use a operating system, you can probably use Determinate Nix, Windows with WSL, Mac OS, Red Hat and its derivatives, Ubuntu and its ecosystem like Debian and whatnot, and including NixOS and other Linuxes. We pride ourselves here on being collaborative within an organization and supporting collaboration within your organization to support um, an adoption of Nix. Um, and then again, like as a developer on a first day on your team, all you have to do is run determinate nixd login. It takes you to Flake Hub. You log in, however, with GitHub, your GitHub account or Microsoft Entra, and you are ready to go. You get access to all of your team's private flakes, binary cache, configuration. You don't have to copy paste secrets. You don't have to risk compliance or like deal with rotation or anything like that. And you don't have to have like a miles long Confluence runbook or Notion doc about how to install Nix for, your special Snowflake version of how you do it. Determinate Nix works really great out of the box. You log into Flake Hub and it works even better. And it continues from there. So when your team's onboarded, you can use Determinate Nix and Flake Hub up in CI. You get super easy 2 lines of configuration, get you binary cache access, read and write, and an installed Nix that is configured just like everybody else in your team. You don't have to configure your project to have any secrets. You don't have to like set an API token in the repository secrets or anything. All of these platforms that we support, GitHub, GitLab, Semaphore, a couple others, they log in using a JWT, so federated cloud native authentication that is identified by your workload. And again, that's really important to us. So it's just very easy to get started and do so in a secure way. And then ultimately, throughout the life cycle of your project, you need to be staying up to date. You don't want to be depending on very old versions of Nix packages or other projects. And we have two GitHub actions to support that. Update Flake Lock and a tool called Flake Checker, which raises a flag if you're depending on something that's out of date or an unsupported version of Nix packages. Um, and to top it off, and again, like you don't. This is another thing about Nix. I'm going to go off on a little tangent here. It's very easy and tempting to say, well, if I'm going to start with Nix, I want to finish with Nix and dev and CI, build an artifact, push to production, run Nix in production. You don't have to do that. Like using it for your development environment is enough. Using it in CI is enough. You can get a ton of utility out of Nix just in those two places, or even just one of those two places. And if it's really hard to package your app and build it up with Nix, don't do it. It's fine. It's okay. I think that can do more harm than good. So a certain amount of taste here is worth applying. But if you do deploy with Nix, you can build out containers and ship those to a registry, deploy it to Kubernetes or wherever. If you're using Amazon, we publish a NixOS AMI with Determinate Nix pre-installed. Combine that with our support for IAM and STS. As soon as it boots up, it can log into FlakeHub. And that means you can just do 2 lines of code. Authenticate to FlakeHub, download and switch to and apply your software that you don't want to be running. It's super fast. There's no building or evaluating. It just directly downloads artifacts from FlakeHub cache. And it's fast enough that you can run that in an auto-scaling group. On that note, we also have some really exciting work happening with NVIDIA Jetsons and more embedded and more like field deployed devices, which we're really excited about and can't wait to talk about more in the future. One of the things that makes us different, though, is our deep experience internally. We have most of our team is comprised of people who are contributors to Nix packages and Nix and NixOS and have been for years. Especially, having Ilko, obviously, but the rest, like almost the entire team has that pedigree behind them. And we use that experience and our background and experience in consulting to have a customer-informed roadmap for Nix, Determinate Nix in our tools. And so we have some great improvements come in. We're working on parallel evaluation to cut down evaluation time. We're currently in the process of rolling out what we call lazy trees. That makes Nix a ton faster in mono repos and very, very large projects. A huge number of UX improvements we've made. And then something really exciting we haven't talked a ton about is the ability on a Mac to build for Linux. And you could build for ARM Linux or you could build for x86 Linux using Rosetta. And so you get really quite good performance using Nix, building for those foreign targets, and testing, you're testing your stack on the actual architecture you're expecting it to run on. And all of that combined, we ship often. We ship a new version of Determinate Nix every week or two, and that's because we are doing those releases in coordination and in discussion with our customers. And so we have this really tight feedback loop of, this is hurting our team, or this could be a lot better if we take that feedback really seriously, prioritize it, and ship it as quickly as possible. And so that's another thing that we're able to do, and one of the main driver behind us shipping Determinate Nix is the ability to iterate quickly and support your team as much as possible. Just a wall of logos. Here are pieces of tech and stacks that we 100% know work and have worked with. And it is not, this is not complete. This is not a complete list, but if you see your components on here, we've got a really great story for you. And if you don't, I'd love to hear about it. So we can add it and grow the experience that we're able to provide. That's pretty much what I got. A few links here. One, if you want to install Determinate Nix, docs.determinate.systems is the place to go. Zero to Nix is our documentation website. It's like your first 2 hours with Nix. Here's how you get productive and do something interesting. Product. It's really, really nice. It's not like overly about Determinate Nix specifically. It really applies to Nix generally. And then the third thing is we think Nix is really fantastic for all sorts of use cases, and that includes things like defense tech and energy sectors or critical infrastructure. All these places that sort of make society go. We are looking at we're starting a community for these people that we call NatSec Nix. And if that describes you, we have a Google form where we're collecting some information. That's not for like lead gen or anything. It's just purely about creating this community. So we'd love to have you be part of it if you'd go fill out that form. That's it. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Graham. Appreciate hearing not only your story with Ilko and starting Determinate, but getting your best practices and your view on how to do Nix at enterprise scale. Because, I think we all would agree on this webinar that Nix is absolutely incredible. And sometimes the needs of teams and enterprises are different than the needs of the community. And so I love that we are kind of bringing those two things together here at Determinate Systems. So we've got some questions in the Q&A. I've got a couple from outside of the Q&A that I will make sure we get to. If you have any questions, if anything that Graham said inspired a thought, a question, some feedback, please drop it in the Q&A or in the chat, but the Q&A is more central. And why don't we jump into some of these? Do you have one that you can see, Graham, that you want to pick, or do you want me to start with one and then let you answer it?
Yeah, I haven't looked at them yet, so why don't you pick one?
All right. So here's one. How does Determinate Systems stay aligned with and contribute to the upstream Nix project while also delivering the enterprise grade stuff that we're doing at Determinate?
Yeah. Cool. So we work closely with the upstream Nix team. Ilko spends a very large amount of his time working directly on upstream Nix. All of the changes that we make with the goal of upstreaming those changes. And Some of them are accepted and merged already. Some of them um, may, we would like them to be, and we are committed to working with the upstream project to get them merged, but they may just not be merged. For example, we've declared Flake stable and have a guarantee around the compatibility there. And upstream, it's really up to them when, and no idea when that'll happen upstream. Um, and at the same time, we've really committed to our customers that if they're using Nix in a way today, we're going to support that into the future. And that may be direct, literally what you have today will continue to work, or it may be here's the migration process about how we can support you moving away from that process to something that is better and better for them and better for us.
Got it. Great. All right, let's grab another one here. I'm going to go to the chat. I'm not sure if you've heard of Sonatype Nexus repository. But from what I can tell, it is a software repository manager that allows teams to manage and distribute software artifacts, including binaries, components, and packages. And the question is if Nix is something that you can use with something like Sonatype Rexus or Nexus repository.
Yeah, yes, you can. So you can use Sonatype as a source for your your build time dependencies. So you could publish artifacts there and download them as like fixed output sources. Um, I suspect there's a way to use it as a binary cache, but I'm not 100% sure. That's really what we've built FlakeHub for, is to be able to have that binary cache internally, apply access control rules to it, and also have it be a native binary cache that Nix truly understands very well.
How do you feel about some Rust questions? We got a couple Rust questions.
I love Rust questions. Let's do
I
it.
know, I know. So here's one. Do you have any resources that you can think of? Some of the best ones for working with Rust and Nix?
Sure. We have been meaning to publish something here. I think Zero to Nix has some material about this worth taking a look at. My current best recommendation is to use um, a, a library. You can find it on FlakeHub called Crane, which is really fantastic for um, uh, building things with Rust. You can do all sorts of like static builds or more very complicated build very complicated Rust projects with it. So I definitely look at Zero to Nix, and I'd also definitely look at Crane.
Cool.
And happy to
All right.
talk more if there's more specific questions after.
Yeah. And while I tee up the next question about Rust, how could they get in touch with you if they wanted to talk about Rust more after this?
Oh yeah. So if you go to Determinate Systems, determinate.systems/Discord.
Yep.
Wow, I should have put that on the slide. But there you go. You can join our Discord and ping me there. I'm Graham C.
Cool. All right. So here's a little bit of a more deep Rust question. How do you envision, if you do, a possible transition from C to Rust? For example, DARPA and other military tech players are making this move.
Yeah, absolutely. So we essentially our entire stack is built with Rust. Our tools that we the things that so determinate Nix, it's two parts. It's Nix itself, and then it's determinate Nix D. Determinate Nix D is all Rust, and we are fairly committed to migrating more and more of Nix over into Rust. Not part of Determinate Nix D, to be clear, but part of the upstream project and migrating the project over time into Rust. It's a very challenging project, but it's absolutely something that we want to do. And I believe need to do because of the risks that are posed by languages like C and C++.
Right on. Do you want to pick one or do you want me to keep going?
There was one great question about the security compliance of FlakeHub. Kind of,
Okay.
not, good question, but not as exciting as Rust, as I might say. Um,
Yeah.
so FlakeHub itself, we are SOC 2 Type 2 compliant. We have we do quite a lot of work around CVE monitoring and remediation, and policy and controls around access to the data and uh, publishing only from CI. We run a really tight ship around Flake Hub, and I'd be glad to have a deeper conversation about that directly as well.
Yeah, and I
Oh,
just posted a link to our trust center in the chat
perfect.
for everybody that has some more information about how we handle security and compliance.
Cool.
Here's one I think could be interesting, and it's related to some of what you talked about here. What architectural choices underlie the hardened release process that you shared with us, and how do they enhance security?
Yeah. So we build our own. When you install Determinate Nix, you get a build of Nix that was built by us, and that is not strictly necessarily the amount of that is actually built by us is increasing over time. And so when you get that Nix, you can be confident that it came from GitHub Actions, that it was not tampered with. The build process of that was completely documented and executed from the repository. We also do very careful security monitoring for the software it depends on and how it was built. And in general, we take an approach that makes it uh, feasible for us to achieve the highest levels of salsa, which we're working on a couple final pieces there, but it's definitely a key part of how we work and how we believe um, Nix should be distributed.
Yeah. All right, I think we might have quite time for one more question.
How about the MDM one at the top?
Cool. Yeah, let's do it. How does Determinate Nix integrate with existing enterprise infrastructure, MDM, CI/CD, identity management? I think you covered a little bit of this in the call. Let's maybe kind of wrap us up with a summary of that.
Yeah, frankly, beautifully. We really want to be walking into the front door, and so we make the tools and whatnot and resources for your company to adopt it, right? And so being able to integrate with Entra for SSO, so that the day you start, you have access, and the day somebody leaves your team, their access is gone. That's a fundamental goal of how we've built our stuff. Being able
Yep.
to ship uh, Determinate Nix installer with our macOS package and MDM, that is traditionally very hard because frankly, uh, our CLI installer was not meant to be used like that, and the upstream installer definitely was not meant to be used like that. Our Mac OS package is intended to, you can run it, uh, every 10 minutes, every single day, and it will work, every single time. And so having the integration in for IT to not have to be thinking about it all the time, for it to just work and be reliable. It's just core to our ethos. And so it's really about making that end-to-end arc of the first day of work, having a great experience that's predictable and reliable in CI, and all tied up into your existing stack, however you working at your company.
Yep. Fantastic. Well, I think that's a great ending because it really talks about a lot of the hard work that this entire team has put into making Nix, simple, confident, and secure for teams. And a lot of that is that integration story because we know you're using a lot of tools. We know you don't need another identity provider. What you need is to
Yeah,
use the identity provider that you've already vetted, and Determined has made that easy.
that's right.
So, all right, with that, well, I'm going to wrap this up. We're at time. So thank you so much for everyone that joined. If there's some other questions that we can answer, hop into the Discord. There's a link in the chat. Or email us at hello@determinate.systems, or find us in any other way. Graham and I both have our email addresses as our first names at determinate.systems. So feel free to reach out. Quick reminder, the session was recorded, so I'll be sending that out as soon as I get it up on YouTube. Feel free to share it with your colleagues if there's someone else that you think should hear what we have. And if you're interested in learning more about how Flake Hub, Determinate Nix, or our premium enterprise support offering can help you and your organization, let us know. We're here for you to help out. So thanks again, everybody, for being here. Graham, thank you so much for running this webinar and sharing everything with us. And stay tuned for our next webinar, everyone, probably in the next few weeks. And we're thinking about doing one on how Determinate uses Nix to run our company and run our engineering organization. So if that's something you'd like to hear, give us a shout, and we'll let you know when we get that webinar scheduled. Otherwise, we hope everyone has a fantastic week, and thank you again.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.